Okay, this demonstration is going to go through the steps of printing from Lightroom using this handout. And today I'm going to do a sample where I'm using a 4900 printer printing to Epson Premium Luster, but you will be able to use this for any color printing to any of the printers at HSU. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize this and just bring up Lightroom, but that is the handout that I'll be going through step by step. Now, the key thing when you're working on an image and you're preparing it for print is, of course, you want to do all of your global adjustments and get your picture looking as you want it. And then before you get ready to print it, it's good to check the white and the black sliders, because this is going to identify either where you will not have ink in the case of something being completely white, or it also helps you to see where your black is in your images, the truest black that will not have any detail in it. So I would hold down the Alt or Option key and then press on the white. And I see that I don't have any white there, which is good. That will mean that everything will print throughout the paper. If I were to have something like this, I would want to double check to see, okay, what is that is clipped? And then bringing it down to the left just a little to start to get rid of that white marking. Then in the black, if I hold down the Alt key here, I can see that I have some complete black there at the very bottom. And I do a check, and that is actually the shadow underneath the tree in the really dark areas. So that is good to go. The next thing to do is, when you're ready to print, is then hit the print module here at the top right. And when you're working in the print module, the first thing you really need to do is over in the bottom left, and this is step number 2 on the handout. This is where we go to page setup, and this is where we will define the physical size of the paper that we're printing to, which is always a good thing to do before you get any further. So I'll click on page setup, and it actually doesn't really matter at this point if you what printer you set it to. But just to get in the habit of it, I'm just going to go ahead and select the 4900, which is what I said I'll be doing. And we are actually, if you go to paper size, we are going to be making custom paper sizes all semester. We're printing to roll paper, so we kind of need to define where the end of the roll is that we want to print to. So I would click on Manage Custom Sizes. This is step number 3. When I do that, it brings up this next pop-up window. And as step 4 describes, you will hit the plus button. We're going to add a new custom size, which you will likely have to do every time you print. I don't think this will save into your catalog information, but maybe it does, I can't remember. So if I go to plus, I can create a new custom size. Now, the paper that we're printing to is usually either 16 inches wide or 17 inches wide. The luster paper is 16, the matte paper is 17. A little bit weird, a little confusing, but we will always want to set our width to whatever the width of the paper is. And then the height, for most of the printing that we'll be doing in this class, we'll be doing prints that will be about 11 by 15, or sorry, 10 by 15, so 11 by 16 will work really well. So I'm going to set my height to 11. Then I'm going to set all of my margins to 0, because we will be setting our margins elsewhere. Once I have that set, 16, 11, 0, 0, 0, I'm good. I could name it 16 by 11 here if I wanted to, but I'm just going to go ahead and leave it untitled and hit OK. And then I will hit OK again. And we can see at the rulers here that I do have it 16 by 11. So now that we're back in the main print module, the print size, as we can see, is visible, and we verified that with the rulers. And then the next steps that we need to take are on the right-hand side here, starting at the top, and this is going to define how we want that print to lay on the paper as we've defined it. The first step when you're doing a single print here is to do single image contact sheet. Under image settings, do not check zoom to fill, because again we will be defining our borders later, but likely you will want to hit rotate to fit. If you don't have that checked, in this example it's a vertical picture, it would print awkwardly on that 16 by 11 paper. So if I rotate it to fit, that will help a lot. And then those are the only two things that you need to really keep an eye on there. Unchecking zoom to fill and then checking rotate to fit. As we move down under layout, this is where we can define our margins. I usually like to set all the margins to 1/2 inch. And at least for this size, of course that can vary. And that will give us an even border all around. On page grid, really we're setting this up to only print one image, so you'd want to leave that 1 by 1. And then this cell spacing will likely be grayed out. And for cell size, if it's not already at the maximum, like if it was small, depending on how you kind of came into this, you can increase that to the maximum size if you have your margins set correctly. So that will kind of max out what you can do with a 1/2 inch border on all sides with a 16 by 11 sheet of paper. Under there, we go on to guides, and this is really all things that are not going to be printed. They're just sort of helpful sort of instruments to show you where the page bleed is and the margins, etc. So that's just your personal preference, but that is how you can turn the rulers on and off to just verify that you created the right page setup. Under page, you'll want to make sure that everything is unchecked. This was used oftentimes for contact sheets or if you need a title printed on the bottom, but we don't want any text on our images, so we're going to make sure everything there is unchecked. And then we come to print job, and this is where we have a lot of things we need to set. So we will be printing to a printer, so you don't want to select JPEG file, you want to make sure that's on printer. You want to have it with draft mode unchecked. And then the print resolution, we are going to set to 300, and I will talk more in class and in lecture about why you want to set that to 300 and times when you maybe don't want to set it to 300, but for starting off, 300 is a good thing to do. Print sharpening for now, I'm going to have you guys leave off, and we can talk more also about print sharpening. You can do that earlier on in your editing, or you can do it here. Check 16-bit output if it gives you that option. And then the next step is to define, and this is kind of the most complicated part in a way, we really want to define how the print translates to that paper and printer. And how the print driver does that is with the use of an ICC profile. It's a little software item that is embedded in our color library, and it helps to basically say, okay, this is where the print is coming from, this particular color source. Then we need it to print to this particular printer on this particular paper, and that helps to translate the colors more accurately, the density more accurately, etc. So under color management, we have to select not managed by printer, but instead managed essentially by this ICC profile. It might show up here as one of the options once you've used it a couple of times, but likely starting off you'll have to go to Other and then find the profile. When you do this, it's going to bring up a large series of options that can seem a little bit overwhelming, but what we're basically looking for is the printer we want to print to and then the paper name that we want to print to. So in this case, I'm going to be printing to an Epson 4900 printer, which are the two smaller printers in room 119 or 119A. And the paper is going to be the Premium Luster Photo Paper 260. This is one of the standard papers that we use. So I will check that. Again, it matches my printer 4900 and then Premium Luster Photo Paper 260. The other papers that you might use this semester, you might use the enhanced matte paper that's here, and there's two options for the enhanced matte paper. One ends in MK, the other ends in PK. And this refers to the kind of black ink it's going to use. The Epson printers make a black ink that is for shinier luster paper, and then that's the PK, which stands for photo black. K in printing world means black because B stands for blue, so K is black. And then MK is meant more for the matte papers. And the thing about the matte papers that we will use this semester is that they give you the option of what black you want it to print from. We can print from either one, and you could certainly do a test to find out which one you think looks better, but you will just need to make sure on the printer that you have the matte black selected, which I go over in a different video. So for most purposes, we will be using the Enhanced Matte MK if you are printing for matte paper. And for this example, again, we're using the luster, which automatically prints to the PK ink. Another one that you might encounter this semester, if you print to the larger printer in room 125, you have to select the SCP-8000 series options. That stands for SureColor, which is the name of the printer. And you will find then here, way down at the bottom, Premium Luster Photo Paper 260 to the P8000. So again, you're essentially looking for what printer you want to use and the paper. So again, I was way up here at the Epson Stylus Pro 4900 Premium Luster 260. So I'll hit OK. And then that will put that into the profile option. For starting off, we will do perceptual in terms of intent. This basically, perceptual works most of the time, and it is saying that when the colors that you have within your digital file, if the color profile can read those colors and knows how to translate it, then perceptual works really great. If you end up with a file where a bunch of the images, colors, it can't quite figure out how to translate, either because you've done really radical post-production editing or your files were really underexposed, then sometimes relative works better. So we will start with perceptual, and then we will problem solve if we need to, working with the relative. Usually though, if something's going really wacky with the colors, the problem is elsewhere. We want to leave the print adjustment unchecked. And then once we have these set, again, some of the key things here are just making sure the layout looks really good here in the window, and then making sure the print resolution is at 300 and that you have the correct ICC profile listed here. We are then going to go into the printer ... option from the bottom right. And this is where we kind of do some of the fine-tuning communication with the printer that we will be sending this to. Again, I was going to do this demo based on the 4900. So I will select the printer here. And then what you need to do is, in this pop-up window, underneath where it says Layout, you are going to go to Print Settings. And this kind of talks a little bit more about the physicality of the printer and some of the specific settings you want here. Now, most of the semester we will be printing to roll paper, and that is what you see in this first option for page setup. However, we don't want the borderless auto expand option because we have already set up our page in the way that we want it. So we need to change that to just plain old roll paper. The next thing is you tell the printer what paper you think you have in it so that it makes sure that everything is communicating properly. Premium Luster Photo Paper is the one that I want selected. So if you need to find that, that is under Photo Papers and is likely the top one listed. If you are doing the matte paper, you will go under matte paper and select enhanced matte paper, which is what we will use as our standard matte paper. So again, I want Premium Luster 260. You can see here that it already knows that I have chosen the photo black ink just inherently through the ICC profile that I selected, so that's grayed out. I will tell it here to print 16-bit as well. And then the color management is off, it's grayed out, because we're already telling it in the previous step to use the ICC profile for the color management. And then under output resolution, we will print to 1440. That's a pretty good standard way to print to the two types of substrates that we're printing to. So 1440 is what we'll choose. And then we will uncheck the super microweave and we will uncheck the high speed. And we can go into more details about why you would do those things in class, but that is what you set it to. Now, once you have this ready to go, you will then hit print and it should communicate with the printer from there. In this case, I'm not actually going to hit print because I actually am not connected to the printer. But if I were to do that, then you would see a progress bar over here on the left, top left, saying it's being sent. And another thing that would pop up is the status software of the printer, and then you should be good to go. The key thing about printing is that the first print that you make is known as a hard proof. We can't really know how this is going to look as a print until we make a proof print. And a hard proof is one where you're actually making a physical copy versus just proofing it on the screen. Then once you see your hard proof, you'll go through and potentially go back to the develop module. Maybe if it printed too dark, you decide, okay, now I'm going to adjust the exposure. If the highlights were too bright, you bring those down. If the shadows were really blocked up, you maybe bring up the shadows or bring up the blacks. And you just kind of take the feedback that the hard print gives you, and then you make another final version. Don't be surprised though if it takes sometimes 2 or 3 prints to get to that final image that you want. Okay, good luck.